The rain had turned the forest road into a river of mud. Ilawan Mossgrove lay face down in it, her thin dress soaked through, her body too broken to move. Every breath sent fire through her ribs, blood mixed with rainwater trickling from the gash above her eye where Aldrich's ring had split the skin. She could still hear his voice, calm and measured, as he dragged her from the carriage. "You ungrateful wretch, I fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof when your parents left you with nothing." His boot had connected with her stomach. She'd curled into herself, but there was nowhere to hide. "Lord Pemberton offered £12,000 for you, 12,000. All you had to do was smile, keep quiet, and let an old man have his bride." "He's 63, she'd whispered through split lips. "He's buried 2 wives already." "And he'll bury you too if you don't learn obedience. But you couldn't manage that, could you?" Another kick, another rib cracking. "Please," she'd begged. "I'll do anything else. I'll work. I'll disappear. Just don't sell me to him." Aldrich had crouched beside her then, gripping her jaw with fingers that smelled of tobacco and cruelty. "You already belong to me, Elowen. I made sure of that." Her back burned at the memory. 3 years ago, when she'd tried to run the first time, he'd taught her a lesson she'd never forget. The brand. His family crest seared into her flesh between her shoulder blades. A mark of ownership. A permanent reminder that she was property, not person. "No one will want damaged goods," he had said as she'd screamed. "But at least now everyone will know who you belong to." She belonged to no one now. She was dying in the mud, and Aldrich was probably already back at Selwyn Manor, telling the servants she'd run off again. Ungrateful niece, always troubled, such a burden. He'd wait a few days, then report her missing. The magistrate would shake his head sympathetically. Young women who fled their families rarely survived long on their own. Tragic, but predictable. No one would search this road. It was barely used, a shortcut through the Ashvale forest that only locals knew. Aldrich had chosen it perfectly. Ilawan closed her eyes. The rain was cold, but she'd stopped shivering. She knew what that meant. Her body was surrendering. Perhaps it was better this way. No more beatings, no more locked rooms, no more waking in terror when footsteps approached her door. No more hiding the scars, the bruises, the shame of being something to be sold rather than someone to be loved. She thought of her mother, dead from fever when Elowen was 7. Her father, killed in a factory accident 2 months later, the solicitor reading her parents' will, explaining that guardianship fell to her father's brother, Aldrich Selwyn. "You'll be well cared for," the solicitor had promised. Lies. All of it. The sound of wheels on mud made her eyes snap open. A carriage was approaching, moving slowly through the storm. Lanterns swayed on either side, cutting weak yellow lines through the rain. Elowen tried to call out, but her voice was barely a rasp. Her throat was too raw from screaming. The carriage drew closer. She could hear horses snorting, a driver cursing the weather. They would pass her. She was just a dark shape in the mud, invisible in the downpour. "Please," she thought, "please see me." The carriage slowed, stopped. A door opened and a figure stepped out into the rain. The man moved with purpose, his long coat billowing as he strode toward her. He carried a lantern, its light swinging across the mud until it found her. Good God! His voice was deep, sharp with shock. He knelt beside her, setting the lantern down. Gloved hands touched her face, her neck, checking for a pulse. His fingers were gentle despite their efficiency. "Can you hear me?" Elowen managed a small sound. Not quite a word. "Don't try to speak. I'm going to move you." His hand slid beneath her shoulders, and pain exploded through her back. She cried out, jerking away from him with strength she didn't know she had left. "Don't," she gasped. "Please, don't touch my back." The man went still. In the lantern light she could see his face now. Strong features, dark brows drawn together in confusion, gray eyes that seemed to assess everything at once. He was perhaps 30, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "You're injured," he said carefully. "I need to move you to the carriage." "Not my back." She was shaking, and not from cold. "Promise me, please, don't touch my back." Something shifted in his expression. Not pity, something sharper. Understanding, perhaps, or suspicion. "I promise. I'll be careful." He adjusted his grip, sliding his arms beneath her knees and around her shoulders, avoiding her back entirely. When he lifted her, the pain in her ribs stole her breath, but he held her secure against his chest. "Harwick," he called to the driver. "Clear the seat. Find blankets. Now." The driver scrambled to obey, his voice carrying notes of alarm. "Your Grace, should I fetch a physician from the village?" "Your Grace." Elowen's heart stuttered. She looked up at the man carrying her, seeing the quality of his coat, the signet ring on his finger, the absolute authority in his bearing. "We'll take her to Thornhaven," the man said. "Send a rider ahead. I want Dr. Ashworth waiting when we arrive." Thornhaven. The word pierced through Elowen's fog of pain. Thornhaven Manor, seat of the Duke of Ashcroft, which meant the man holding her, the man whose arms were warm around her broken body, was Theron Blackwell, the most powerful lord in the Northern Territories, and the sworn enemy of her uncle. Aldrich spoke of him with venom at every dinner, the Duke who blocked his business dealings, the Duke who denied his petitions, the Duke who suspected the Selwyns of corruption, but could never prove it. Elowen had been found by the one man her uncle feared most. She didn't know whether to weep with relief or terror. Firelight, warmth, softness beneath her. Elowen woke slowly, her body cataloging its pains one by one. Ribs, throbbing, head, aching, face, tender and tight with stitches. But she was dry, clean, lying in a bed softer than anything she'd felt in years. She opened her eyes. The room was elegant but restrained. Dark wood paneling, heavy curtains drawn against what looked like morning light, a fire crackling in a stone hearth. Not an inn. Somewhere finer. Thornhaven Manor. Memory flooded back. The road. The rain. The Duke lifting her into his carriage. His promise not to touch her back. She reached behind her instinctively, fingers brushing the fabric of a clean nightgown. The brand was still covered. Still hidden. "You've been unconscious for a day and a half." Elowen turned her head too quickly, wincing as pain shot through her neck. The Duke sat in a chair beside the window, watching her with those sharp, assessing eyes. In daylight he looked even more formidable than he had in the rain. Dark hair, strong jaw, the kind of stillness that suggested absolute control over everything, including himself. "The physician says you'll recover," he continued. 3 broken ribs, extensive bruising, a head wound that required stitches. Someone beat you severely. It wasn't a question. Elowen said nothing. The Duke stood, walking to a small table where a pitcher waited. He poured water into a glass and brought it to her bedside, helping her sit up just enough to drink. His movements were careful, precise, never once touching her back. He'd remembered. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible, "for finding me. Thank the storm. I'd have taken the main road otherwise." He set the glass down. "Now, tell me who did this to you." "Why does it matter?" "Because someone left you to die on a road no one uses, and I want to know who thought they could commit murder in my territory." My territory. The words carried weight, possession, responsibility. Elowen studied his face, searching for the trap. There was always a trap. Aldrich had taught her that. "If I tell you, what happens to me? That depends on what you tell me. Will you send me back?" Something passed across the Duke's features. "Back where?" Elowen took a breath. It hurt, but she forced the words out anyway. To my uncle, Aldrich Selwyn. The silence that followed was absolute. The fire crackled. The Duke's jaw tightened. You're Selwyn's niece, he said slowly. The one who supposedly ran away years ago? I didn't run. I tried once. He made sure I'd never try again. Her voice was steadier than she expected. He's been hiding me, using me, and when I refused to marry the man he'd sold me to, he decided I wasn't worth the trouble anymore. Sold you? Lord Pemberton. £12,000 for a virgin bride. The word tasted like ash. I said no, so my uncle threw me from his carriage and left me in the mud to die. The Duke was very still. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but she heard the edge beneath it. Aldrich Selwyn has been under investigation for 3 years. Fraud, extortion, abuse of tenants. I've never been able to prove any of it. He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto hers. But you've been inside his household. You've seen things. Haven't you? Elowen's heart pounded. She had seen things. Ledgers with false entries, letters threatening farmers who couldn't pay, servants who disappeared after asking too many questions. She'd seen it all, memorized it all, because information was the only currency a powerless girl could hoard. Yes, she breathed, I've seen everything. The Duke's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes caught fire. Then we have much to discuss, Miss Musgrove. The Duke returned to his chair by the window, but his posture had changed. He sat forward now, elbows on knees, fingers steepled beneath his chin. A predator who just scented prey. Tell me everything, he said, from the beginning. So Elowen did. She told him about her parents' deaths, about the solicitor who'd handed her to Aldrich like a parcel, about the first years, when her uncle had merely neglected her, leaving her to servants who ranged from indifferent to cruel. She told him about the night she'd turned 16, when Aldrich had looked at her differently for the first time, when he'd explained that she was no longer a burden, but an asset, a commodity. He started presenting me to wealthy men, she said, her voice flat. Widowers, old lords who wanted young wives, men who'd pay handsomely for someone with no family to ask questions. And you refused them. I refused the first one, Lord Whitmore. He was 72 and had a reputation for cruelty. Elowen's hands twisted in the bedsheets. My uncle locked me in the cellar for 2 weeks. No food, barely any water. When he finally let me out, he said the next time I refused, it would be worse. But you refused again. Lord Pemberton would have killed me, maybe not quickly, but eventually. I decided I'd rather die on my own terms than his. The Duke was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. The brand on your back. When did that happen? Elowen flinched. How do you know about that? You begged me not to touch you there. You panicked when I tried to lift you. And the physician. He paused. He examined you while you were unconscious. He saw the scar. Shame flooded through her, hot and suffocating. She'd kept that secret for 3 years, hidden it beneath high-backed dresses and carefully positioned shawls. And now a stranger knew. 2 strangers. It was after my first escape attempt, she whispered. I made it almost to the village before his men caught me. My uncle said he needed to mark his property so everyone would know who I belonged to. His family crest. Yes. The Duke rose abruptly, walking to the fireplace. His back was to her, shoulders rigid with tension she couldn't read. Aldrich Selwyn is a monster, he said, his voice low. I've known that for years, but I've never been able to touch him. He has allies in Parliament. He bribes magistrates. Every witness I've found has either been paid off or disappeared. He turned to face her. You could change that. You've lived in his household for 12 years. You know where the bodies are buried, perhaps literally. With your testimony, your knowledge, I could destroy him. And what happens to me while you're destroying him? That's what I want to discuss. The Duke crossed back to her bedside, his intent gaze holding hers. You need protection. Real protection. The kind Selwyn can't penetrate. And I need information only you possess. You're proposing a transaction. I'm proposing a marriage. The word hung in the air like smoke. You can't be serious, Elowen breathed. I'm always serious about strategy. He didn't look away. As my wife, you become untouchable. A duchess. Selwyn can't claim you as property. Pemberton can't demand you as his purchased bride. You'll have legal standing, social position, and my full protection. In exchange for helping you destroy my uncle. In exchange for justice. For you and for everyone he's ever hurt. Elowen's mind raced. You don't know me. I could be lying about everything. You're not. I've spent 3 years investigating Selwyn. Everything you've told me aligns with what I suspected but couldn't prove. This is insane. This is practical. He straightened. I won't pretend this is romantic, Miss Mossgrove. I'm offering you a partnership. Separate rooms. Separate lives. In private. In public, we present a united front. You help me build an unassailable case against Selwyn. I keep you safe while we do it. And if I refuse? Then I'll pay for your recovery and help you disappear. New name, new location, enough money to start over. His jaw tightened. But know this. The moment you surface anywhere, Selwyn will find you. He thinks you're dead right now. That's your only advantage. Once he learns you survived, he'll come for you. And next time, I won't be there. Elowen stared at him, this stranger who was offering her everything she'd never dared to want. Safety, power, a chance to make Aldrich pay for every bruise, every scar, every night she'd spent crying in the dark. One condition, she said slowly. Name it. The other girls, the ones he's sold before me. If we find them, we help them too. The Duke's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. Agreed. What else? I need to know why this matters so much to you. Not just politics, not just justice. Why do you hate him? The Duke was quiet for a long moment. Because 5 years ago, Aldrich Selwyn destroyed someone I loved. He made it look like an accident, but I know the truth. His voice was ice. My younger sister, she was investigating his treatment of tenants. She got too close to proof, and she died for it. Elowen understood then. This wasn't just about justice. This was about revenge. Then we have an agreement, she said. Help me sit up. I want to shake your hand properly. The Duke helped her rise, his touch careful, avoiding her back. When she extended her hand, he took it. His grip was firm and warm, anchoring her. Welcome to Thornhaven, Miss Mossgrove. When you're well enough, we'll begin. Begin what? Teaching you how to be a duchess. 4 days later, Elowen stood in the entrance hall of Thornhaven Manor, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of her new life. The manor was ancient and imposing. Stone walls rose 3 stories high, lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors who seemed to judge her from their gilded frames. A grand staircase swept upward, splitting into 2 wings. Crystal chandeliers caught the morning light, scattering rainbows across marble floors. It was beautiful. It was daunting. The East Wing will be your domain, the Duke said beside her. Private chambers, sitting room, dressing room. The West Wing is mine. We'll share the common spaces, library, dining room, and the gardens. It's larger than my uncle's entire estate. Thornhaven has been in my family for 6 generations. We've had time to expand. He gestured toward the staircase. Mrs. Valerie will show you to your rooms. She's the housekeeper. Anything you need, she'll provide. As if summoned, an older woman appeared from a side corridor. She was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked auburn hair pulled back severely and eyes that missed nothing. Her dress was immaculate, her posture perfect. "Your Grace," she said with a precise curtsy, "the chambers are prepared as you requested. Mrs. Vellery, this is Miss Elowen Mossgrove. She'll be the Duchess of Ashcroft within the fortnight. She's recovering from an accident and requires care. See to it." Mrs. Vellery's sharp gaze swept over Elowen, cataloguing the fading bruises, the careful way she held herself, the fear she couldn't quite hide. "Of course, Your Grace." Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. "Welcome to Thornhaven, Miss Mossgrove. We're honored to have you." "Thank you." Elowen kept her voice level despite the tremor in her hands. "I hope I won't be too much trouble." "Nonsense. This house has been without a duchess for far too long." Mrs. Vellery offered her arm. "Come, I'll show you to your rooms. You need rest before we begin." "Begin what?" Mrs. Vellery exchanged a glance with the Duke. "Your transformation," she said simply. "You have 12 days to become someone your uncle won't recognize, someone society will respect, someone who can walk into any ballroom in England and command attention." 12 days? "The Duke doesn't believe in wasted time." Mrs. Vellery guided her toward the staircase. "Neither do I." As they climbed, Elowen glanced back. The Duke still stood in the entrance hall, watching her ascent with an expression she couldn't decipher. She was a stranger in a fortress, about to marry a man she barely knew, preparing to destroy the uncle who'd branded her like cattle. 12 days to become a duchess. It seemed impossible. But then again, so had surviving that night in the rain. The next 12 days were relentless. Elowen woke at dawn and didn't stop until exhaustion claimed her each night. Mrs. Vellery had assembled an army of tutors, each more demanding than the last. Etiquette, deportment, conversation, dancing, though her ribs protested every movement. The history of the Blackwell family, their allies, their enemies, the intricate web of politics that governed noble society. She learned which fork to use for fish, which topics were acceptable at dinner, how to curtsy to varying ranks without appearing either servile or arrogant. She learned that the Duke's grandfather had been a war hero, that his father had died when Theron was just 19, leaving him to manage estates and alliances most men didn't master until middle age. She learned that Theron worked from dawn until past midnight, that he hated small talk, but could dissect a political situation with surgical precision, and that he remembered everything anyone ever told him. And she learned, slowly, that he was watching her with something more than strategic interest. Every evening at 8, they dined together. The table was built for 20, and they sat at opposite ends, the distance between them symbolic. But as the days passed, the conversations grew longer, more personal. "Tell me about the ledgers," he said one night. "The ones you saw in Selwyn's study." Elowen had been waiting for this question. She closed her eyes, pulling the memories forward. 2 sets of books. The official records showed modest profits. The hidden ledgers showed the real numbers. She opened her eyes. "He's been stealing from his tenants for years, inflating rents, then pocketing the difference, charging for repairs that never happen, and the estate taxes he claims to pay to the crown, I don't think half of them actually reach the treasury." "Tax evasion." The Duke's voice was thoughtful. "That's a hanging offense. There's more. The servants who disappear, the ones who ask too many questions." Elowen's voice dropped. "There's a groundskeeper, Mr. Finch. He keeps a separate book of names. People who were employed at Selwyn Manor and were never seen again." The Duke set down his wineglass. "How many names?" 17, over the past decade. Silence stretched between them. When the Duke spoke again, his voice was rough. "My sister's name, is it in that book?" "I don't know. I only glimpsed it once. But..." Elowen hesitated. "Your sister, What was her name? Corinne. The word seemed to cost him something. She was 23, brilliant, stubborn. She believed she could change the world by exposing men like Selwyn. What happened to her? A riding accident. Her horse threw her near the cliffs on Selwyn's property. She'd gone to interview a former servant who'd agreed to talk. His jaw tightened. The servant vanished the same day. Corinne's death was ruled accidental. No investigation. No justice. Elowyn reached across the vast table, though she couldn't possibly touch him at this distance. The gesture felt important anyway. "We'll find the truth," she said, her voice soft but certain. For Corinne, for everyone. The Duke looked at her for a long moment. Something broke open in his face, a wall cracking, a glimpse of the grief beneath the control. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "What did you expect?" Someone broken, someone who'd cower and comply. His mouth curved slightly. "Instead, I found someone who negotiates terms from a sickbed and demands justice for strangers. I've been broken. I just refuse to stay that way." Before he could respond, the door burst open. Mrs. Vellery entered, her face pale with urgency. "Your Grace, a message from London. Lord Pemberton has filed a formal complaint with the magistrate. He's claiming Miss Musgrove was promised to him by legal contract and demanding her return." The Duke rose slowly, his expression hardening to iron. "How does he know she's alive?" "Someone must have talked. A servant at the inn, perhaps." Word spreads. Elowyn felt the color drain from her face. "If he has a contract, he has nothing." The Duke's voice cut through her panic. "You were never legally his. Selwyn had no authority to sell you. You're not property." "The brand on my back suggests otherwise." "The brand proves only that your uncle is a criminal. It changes nothing about your legal status." He turned to Mrs. Vellery. "Send word to Reverend Ashby. We marry tomorrow. I won't wait another day." Mrs. Vellery nodded and disappeared. The Duke crossed the room until he stood before Elowyn, close enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. Her voice was barely a breath. "Are you certain? Once we do this, there's no going back." "I was certain the moment you asked me to save the other girls before yourself." His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was gentle, careful, nothing like the hands that had hurt her before. "Tomorrow you become my wife," he said, his voice low. "And God help anyone who tries to take you from me." The wedding was small and swift. Reverend Ashby performed the ceremony in Thornhaven's private chapel, with only Mrs. Vellery and the butler as witnesses. Elowyn wore a simple ivory gown the seamstress had rushed to finish, and when Theron slid the ring onto her finger, his hands were sure even if hers trembled. "With this ring, I thee wed." The words felt surreal. 20 days ago, she'd been dying in the mud. Now she was a duchess. That evening, Theron hosted a small dinner. Nothing elaborate, just 8 guests. Political allies, minor nobility, people whose opinions mattered in the circles where reputations were made and destroyed. "This is your test," he'd explained that afternoon. "Show them the woman I married. Confident, graceful, unshakable. And if I fail, you won't." Now Elowyn sat at the center of the table, painfully aware of every eye assessing her. Lady Ashworth, a silver-haired widow with a tongue like a razor. Lord Crestwick, a banking magnate whose investments shaped fortunes. Sir Hadrian Voss, a barrister with connections to Parliament. And others, each more intimidating than the last. "Your Grace," Lady Ashworth said, her gaze sharp. "Forgive my curiosity, but your courtship with the Duke was remarkably swift. Some might call it scandalous." Elowyn felt the trap in the question. One wrong word, and she'd be dismissed as a fortune hunter, a schemer, or worse. "Swift, yes," she replied calmly. a duke makes a decision, he doesn't hesitate. I've learned to appreciate that quality. And what qualities does he appreciate in you? My honesty, I hope, and my memory for details. Allowen let her gaze drift to Lord Crestwick. Speaking of which, Lord Crestwick, I understand you've invested with several northern estate managers. Have you had dealings with Selwyn Holdings? The table went quiet. Lord Crestwick set down his wineglass. I considered it once. Why do you ask? No particular reason. Only that I've heard whispers about their accounting practices. Discrepancies between reported profits and actual returns. She shrugged delicately. Probably just rumors. What kind of discrepancies? The kind that might warrant an audit, if one were cautious. Lady Ashworth's eyes narrowed with new interest. You seem remarkably well informed for a new bride, Your Grace. I believe in paying attention. Elowen smiled. One never knows when information might prove useful. Later, after the guests departed, Theron found her in the library nursing a glass of sherry with shaking hands. You were magnificent, he said. I was trembling the entire time. Those aren't mutually exclusive. He poured himself whiskey and sat across from her. Lord Crestwick will investigate. He can't resist a potential scandal, especially one involving money. And Lady Ashworth will spread the whispers. By week's end, half of London will be questioning Selwyn's finances. Is that enough? It's a start. Reputations crumble from small cracks. He studied her over the rim of his glass. You planted the first crack tonight, Duchess. The title still felt foreign. But when he said it, something warm bloomed in her chest. 3 days later, an invitation arrived. The Marchioness of Blackwood requests the honor of your presence at her annual spring gala. Theron read aloud. His expression darkened. This Saturday. That's in 4 days. Yes, and according to my sources, your uncle will be attending. Elowen felt ice spread through her veins. Aldrich? At a society gala? He's been cultivating connections, trying to rebuild his reputation after the whispers started spreading. Theron set down the invitation. This is sooner than I planned. But it's also an opportunity. Every important name in London will be present. If we expose him there, everyone will see. Exactly. The next 4 days blurred into intensive preparation. More lessons, more rehearsals, more strategic planning. Theron drilled her on every guest she might encounter, every potential trap, every way Aldrich might try to discredit her. He'll claim you're mentally unstable, Theron warned during one session, that the accident damaged your mind, that you're inventing stories for attention. How do I counter that? By being calmer than he is, more composed, more credible. His eyes held hers. Let him get angry. You stay unwavering. The moment he loses control, he loses the crowd. The night before the gala, Elowen couldn't sleep. She wandered to the library past midnight, seeking distraction in books, and found Theron already there. He stood at the window, staring out at the moonlit gardens, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. Nervous? He asked without turning. Beyond nervous. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He faced her then, and she saw exhaustion carved into his features, the weight of 5 years spent hunting the man who'd killed his sister. Elowen, I need you to understand something. It was the first time he'd used her given name. What we're doing is dangerous. Aldrich won't accept exposure quietly. He'll fight back. He'll target you. I know. Do you? He crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his eyes. Because protecting you has become more than strategy, and that unsettles me more than anything your uncle could do. Her heart stuttered. Theron, don't. His voice was rough. Don't say anything yet. After tomorrow, when this is finished, we'll figure out what this is. But tonight, I need you to know that whatever happens in that ballroom, I will not let him touch you again. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her cheek with devastating gentleness. "Get some rest," he murmured. "Tomorrow, we end this." The Blackwood estate blazed with light, carriages lining the drive for a quarter-mile. Hundreds of guests filled the grand ballroom, a glittering sea of silk and jewels and carefully concealed ambitions. Elowyn descended from the carriage on Theron's arm, wearing deep sapphire velvet that made her eyes luminous. Diamonds glittered at her throat, borrowed from the Ashcroft family vault. Mrs. Vellery had spent 2 hours on her hair, transforming her into someone she barely recognized. Someone who looked like she belonged here. "The Duke and Duchess of Ashcroft," the majordomo announced. Every head turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Elowyn kept her spine straight, her chin high, and her hand resting firmly on Theron's arm. "Breathe," he said under his breath. "I am breathing." "You're holding your breath. Relax. Let him come to you." They navigated the crowd slowly, accepting congratulations, deflecting curiosity, playing the roles they'd rehearsed. Lord Crestwick greeted them warmly, mentioning that he'd begun investigating Selwyn Holdings. Lady Ashworth mentioned that the rumors were spreading faster than she'd expected. And then Elowyn saw him. Aldrich Selwyn stood near the champagne fountain, dressed in his finest evening clothes, laughing at something his companion said. He looked exactly as she remembered, handsome in a way that concealed the rot beneath, confident in his untouchability. He hadn't seen her yet. "Hold yourself together," Theron said in a low voice. "I'm holding. Your hand is crushing my arm." She forced herself to loosen her grip. "Sorry." "Don't be. Channel it." The Marchioness of Blackwood herself approached them, a formidable woman in her 60s who ruled London society with iron grace. "Your Graces. How delightful. I must say, Duke, your bride is even lovelier than the rumors suggested." "The rumors could never do her justice," Theron replied smoothly. The Marchioness studied Elowyn with sharp eyes. "I don't believe I know your family, my dear. Mossgrove, is it?" "Yes, my lady. My parents died when I was young. I was raised by my uncle." Elowyn kept her voice light. "Aldrich Selwyn." The Marchioness's eyebrows rose. "Selwyn? But he's here tonight. I had no idea you were connected." "We haven't spoken in some time. A family disagreement." "How intriguing." The Marchioness smiled like a cat scenting cream. "Perhaps you should reconcile. Family is so important." Before Elowyn could respond, she felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. She turned her head. Aldrich had seen her. His champagne glass shattered on the marble floor, drawing gasps from nearby guests. His face had gone chalk white, eyes wide with disbelief that rapidly transformed into something darker. "Excuse me," he said to his companions, already moving toward her. The crowd parted. Elowyn's heart hammered. Theron's hand covered hers, grounding her. Aldrich stopped 3 feet away. His gaze raked over her, cataloging the diamonds, the velvet, the ring on her finger. "Niece?" he said, his voice strangled. "I thought you were dead." "Clearly not. Where have you been?" "I searched everywhere. I was worried sick." "Were you?" Elowyn cut him off, her voice carrying just enough to reach nearby listeners. "Strange. I was found half dead on a road you chose specifically because no one uses it, almost as if someone wanted me to disappear." Aldrich's mask flickered. "You're confused. The accident—" "There was no accident. There was you, your carriage, and your decision to leave me in the mud like garbage." She held his gaze. "But I survived. And now I'm the Duchess of Ashcroft." "You're delusional." Aldrich's voice dropped, venomous. "Whatever lies you've told your husband, I'll expose them. You're nothing but a hysterical girl making accusations she can't prove." "Perhaps." Theron spoke for the first time, his tone cutting like a blade. "Or perhaps she's the witness I've been searching for, The one who can finally prove what you really are? Aldrich's eyes darted between them. This is absurd. You have no evidence of anything. Don't we? Elowyn tilted her head. Tell me, Uncle, how many names are in Mr. Finch's book now? More than 17? The color drained from Aldrich's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Then you have nothing to fear. She smiled, and it was sharp as broken glass. Enjoy the gala, Uncle. We certainly will. Aldrich retreated, but Elowyn knew it wasn't over. She'd seen the calculation behind his panic, the mind already working on counterattacks. An hour later, she slipped onto the terrace for air, needing a moment away from the watching eyes. The garden stretched below, silvered by moonlight. Footsteps behind her. You shouldn't be alone out here. She turned. Aldrich stood in the doorway, his earlier composure restored. But his eyes were different now, colder. What do you want? To offer you a chance. He moved closer, blocking her path back inside. Walk away from this. Tell your husband you exaggerated. Leave Thornhaven. Disappear. Why would I do that? Because I know things about your husband that could destroy him. Things that would make your marriage invalid. Things that would leave you with nothing. His smile was thin. And because I know where your old nursemaid lives. Sweet Mrs. Thornberry, wasn't it? The only person from your childhood who actually cared about you? Cold terror gripped her chest. Don't. She's in Wiltshire now. A small cottage. Very isolated. Aldrich's voice was casual, conversational. Accidents happen in isolated places. You should know that better than anyone. If you touch her, I won't. As long as you cooperate. He leaned closer. Leave with me tonight. Quietly. No scene. Or tomorrow, Mrs. Thornberry's cottage burns down with her inside, and I release documents proving your precious Duke committed treason during the Continental Wars. You're lying. Theron would never. Wouldn't he? You've known him. What? A month? I've been gathering leverage on the Blackwell family for years. Aldrich's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Choose, Elowyn. Come with me, or watch everyone you care about suffer. Let her go. Theron's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. He emerged from the shadows of the terrace, his expression unreadable as iron. Ashcroft. Aldrich released Elowyn's wrist, stepping back. Eavesdropping is beneath a duke. So is threatening women, but here we are. This is a family matter. She's my wife. That makes it my matter. Theron moved between them, positioning himself like a shield. Whatever documents you think you have, produce them. Let the courts decide their authenticity. And Mrs. Thornberry? Will be under armed guard by morning, as will every other person Elowyn has ever cared about. Theron's voice was deadly calm. You underestimate how thoroughly I've prepared for this, Selwyn. I've spent 5 years learning your methods. I know how you operate, and I know you're bluffing. Am I? The documents you mentioned don't exist. My military record is impeccable. I verified it personally when I realized you might try this. Theron smiled, and it was chilling. You have nothing. And tomorrow, everyone will know it. Aldrich's composure finally cracked. You can't prove anything against me. I don't need to prove it tonight. I just need doubt. Suspicion. The right whispers in the right ears. Theron stepped closer. By morning, 3 separate investigations will be launched into your finances. Lord Crestwick has already found discrepancies. Lady Ashworth has already spread rumors. And my wife has already provided testimony to Sir Hadrian Voss, who, as you may recall, has the ear of the Home Secretary. That testimony is worthless. The word of a damaged girl against a respected... A damaged girl with a brand on her back, bearing your family crest. Theron's voice dropped to a whisper. Did you think she wouldn't tell me? Did you think I wouldn't document it? The physician's report is already filed. Photographic evidence? Sworn statements. Aldrich went gray. Go back to the party, Theron continued. Smile. Pretend everything is fine. And tomorrow, when the magistrates come, you can explain to them why you branded your niece like livestock. Aldrich fled. The moment he disappeared, Eowyn's knees buckled. Theron caught her, pulling her close, his arms wrapping around her with fierce protectiveness. I've got you, he breathed against her hair. You're safe. Mrs. Thornberry, we'll be protected. I promise. I already sent riders before we left tonight. His hand stroked her back, carefully avoiding the scar. I told you. I've prepared for everything. Eowyn pulled back enough to look at his face. Why? Why go this far for me? Because you asked me to save the other girls before yourself. Because you negotiated terms while barely able to stand. Because in a month, you've shown more courage than most people show in a lifetime. His forehead pressed against hers. And because somewhere between finding you in the mud and watching you face your monster without flinching, I fell in love with you. The words hung between them like stars. Theron. You don't have to say it back. I know this wasn't supposed to be real. I know we married for strategy. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle or careful. It was desperate and fierce and full of everything she'd been too afraid to feel. His arms tightened around her, and he kissed her back like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Eowyn laughed. I love you too, she whispered. I didn't plan to, but I do. Then let's finish this. Together. The next morning, Eowyn stood in the Blackwood Estate's grand drawing room, facing 40 of London's most influential citizens. The Marchioness had agreed to host what she called a clarifying conversation. In reality, it was a trial. Aldrich stood on one side, flanked by his solicitor. Eowyn and Theron stood on the other. Between them, the Marchioness presided like a queen dispensing judgment. These are serious allegations, the Marchioness said. Lord Selwyn stands accused of financial fraud, physical abuse, attempted murder, and branding a human being. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Allegations without proof, Aldrich's solicitor declared. My client is a respected member of society. The Duchess is clearly disturbed, seeking revenge for imagined slights. Then let us examine the evidence. Theron's voice cut through the noise. He produced a leather folder. Financial records from Selwyn Holdings, showing systematic embezzlement from tenants over the past decade, verified by Lord Crestwick's independent audit. Lord Crestwick stepped forward. I reviewed the accounts personally. The discrepancies are substantial. Hundreds of thousands of pounds diverted into hidden accounts. Forgery, Aldrich spat. The Duke fabricated the physician's report, Theron continued, producing another document. Documenting a brand scar on the Duchess's back, the Selwyn family crest, confirmed by 3 independent medical professionals. Gasps echoed through the room. She did that to herself, Aldrich said desperately. She's always been unstable. I also have this. Eowyn's voice was unwavering despite her pounding heart. She held up a worn leather journal. Mr. Finch's book, a record of 17 servants who worked at Selwyn Manor and disappeared without trace. Where did you get that? Aldrich lunged toward her, but Theron blocked his path. It was delivered to us this morning, Eowyn said. By Mr. Finch himself, along with his written testimony. He's lying. He's a drunk, I'm neither, my lord. The crowd parted. An elderly man in worn clothes walked forward, his face weathered but his eyes clear. I kept that book for 10 years, Mr. Finch said, because I knew someday someone would ask. 17 names, 17 people who saw things they shouldn't have, who asked questions, who threatened to talk. His voice cracked. Including Lady Corinne Blackwell. The room erupted. Theron went absolutely rigid. Eowyn reached for his hand. She came to interview me, Mr. Finch continued. I was going to tell her everything, but Lord Selwyn found out. He—" The old man's voice broke. "He made her death look like an accident, just like he's done with all the others." "Lies!" Aldrich screamed. "This is a conspiracy. The Duke has paid these people to—" "I've paid nothing," Theron said, his voice frighteningly calm. "The truth doesn't require compensation." "I believe we've heard enough," the Marchioness announced. "Lord Selwyn, you will be detained until the magistrate arrives. Given the severity of these accusations, I'm confident the Home Secretary will take personal interest. You can't do this. I have rights. I have connections. You have nothing." Elowyn stepped forward, facing the man who'd branded her, beaten her, tried to kill her. "You thought I was worthless. Property to be sold, garbage to be discarded." She held his gaze. "But I survived. I found people who saw my value. And now everyone knows exactly what you are." Aldrich's face contorted with rage. He lunged at her, hands reaching for her throat. Theron moved faster. One punch, precise and devastating. Aldrich crumpled to the floor, blood streaming from his nose. "Get him out of my sight," the Marchioness ordered. As guards dragged Aldrich away, still screaming threats and denials, Elowyn felt the weight of 12 years finally lift from her shoulders. It was over. 6 months later, Elowyn stood in the newly completed east wing of Thornhaven Manor, watching morning sunlight stream through tall windows. The space had been transformed. No longer empty guest chambers, but a refuge. 23 women lived here now, learning skills that would help them build new lives: reading, writing, arithmetic, household management, trades that would give them independence. She called it Corinne's house. Theron had wept when she'd told him the name. The only time she'd ever seen him cry. Aldrich was awaiting trial in London, his assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. Lord Pemberton had fled to the continent to avoid investigation into his own dealings. Mr. Finch had been given a cottage on the Thornhaven estate and a pension for life, and 7 of the 17 names in his book had been traced to living families who finally learned what happened to their loved ones. 7 families who could finally grieve properly and seek justice. Footsteps behind her. Arms wrapped around her waist. The Morning Post arrived, Theron said softly against her hair. 3 more applications for the refuge, and a letter from Mrs. Thornberry. She's accepted your invitation to visit next month. Elowyn leaned back into him. Good. I've missed her. There's something else. He turned her to face him, producing a small velvet box. I've been carrying this for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Inside was a ring. Not the wedding band she already wore, but something different. A delicate band of silver, set with a single sapphire that caught the light like captured starlight. It was my sister's, Theron said, his voice low. She wore it every day. It was the one thing of hers I kept after she died. He took her hand. I want you to have it, not because you're my wife, but because you're the woman who gave me back my faith in justice. In people. In love. Elowyn's eyes burned with tears. Theron, you came into my life half dead in the mud, and you brought me back to life. He slid the ring onto her right hand. I found you in the rain, but you found me in the darkness. She kissed him then, softly, slowly, with all the love she'd never believed she deserved. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. No more darkness, she whispered. Not for either of us. No more darkness, he agreed. Through the window, Elowyn could see the gardens of Thornhaven, the forests beyond, the road where everything had changed. She'd been thrown away once, left to die by a man who saw her as nothing, but she'd been found by a man who saw everything she could become, and together, they'd built something the darkness could never touch. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. If this story touched something in you, the fight for justice, the power of being seen, and the strength it takes to survive. I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment and where you're listening from. If you're ready for another story where love conquers the impossible, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the next chapter. You're the reason these stories exist. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing that even in the darkest moments, love can find a way.